All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending today. We're excited to have you. My name is Jess, and I will be hosting the webinar this afternoon. And today's webinar is all about how to support your teachers in using Remind. So we will review training materials. We will jump into the administrator dashboard and take a look at some of the features you can use there, and do all sorts of fun stuff like that. So this webinar typically takes around 45 minutes, and we'll leave the last 10 minutes or so for questions. Feel free to use the Q&A tool during the entire webinar and type in your questions as we go, and I'll make sure to come back to them at the end of the presentation. Do note that this presentation is also recorded, and you will be receiving the slides that we review after the webinar in an email follow-up. So if you're the kind of person like me who just likes to sit back and listen, we're making it easy for you. All the stuff will come in follow-up, so you can have all the resources we discuss. Just to ensure that everyone is in the right spot, this webinar is intended for those of you who will be leading the training. So you are either the site lead at your building or principal. You're here to make sure that you're supporting your teachers and using Remind. A little bit about myself before we jump in. My name is Jess. I am a success manager here at Remind. I work with a lot of our larger districts throughout the country, and I am a former educator myself. I spent 8 years in the classroom. You can see my last school. I was at Fairview High School in Boulder, Colorado, right there in the bottom right-hand corner. There I taught social studies, but I also was a tech lead at the building the last 2 years and helped transition our staff to a one-to-one model and our students to a one-to-one model. So that was a lot of fun, challenging but fun. And I've been on the education technology side of things now for about 4 years, working with districts to make sure that they are having successful rollouts of the different tools that they're using. Our agenda for today, we will be doing some message overview, so you feel empowered to discuss how messaging works and all the features with messaging with your teachers. We'll look at the administrator dashboard and look at how teachers experience Remind and how they create classes, and also how administrators do it as well. We'll talk about onboarding your community, our best practices there, both rostered and non-rostered experiences, and then really dive into the training and talk about what are our suggested best practices for supporting your teachers with Remind. Hopefully by the end of today, you feel ready to teach others about how to send a message on Remind. You feel confident in the aspects of the admin dashboard that will help you support your teachers, and you know where to go for resources so that you can lead a training yourself and point teachers to the self-serve resources that will support them after your training too. So without further ado, we will jump into messaging. For those of you who may not be as familiar with Remind as others, there tend to be more people who have used Remind than not in these sessions, but quick overview, Remind is a communication platform that was built with education in mind. And primarily the big piece of that is that all personal information stays private. Whether you are a parent or a teacher, you're still using your phone, which is our preferred ways and most impactful ways to reach people these days, but keeps all of your phone numbers private and allows you to feel comfortable using that device in the educational context. This is, our teachers have found incredibly helpful in building that foundational relationship that's so critical to student success. So helping you reach parents, helping you reach students if you're in the secondary context in a way that they want to receive messages, that they're more likely to receive messages and stay in the loop, and really help parents feel more comfortable accessing you in your classroom or your teachers, and ensure that your teachers are feeling like their messages are being heard. I know one of the most frustrating things to me, or for me when I was in the classroom, was putting in all this time to making individual phone calls home and never really getting the connection that I desired from that communication activity. So using Remind, our teachers feel like not only does it save them time, but they're also more successful at connecting with parents to support students. So I am going to jump into the product in a moment. And if you're on your own device or on the web and want to open a window and open your Remind too and follow along, definitely feel free to do so. But we're going to talk about how to build a message, the different types of messages, and also all the different dynamic components that can be added to a message to make it more impactful. Do want to note here that now that you are on the Remind plan, there are some additional features that I'm sure your teachers will be very excited about, and you want to make sure in your training that you mention that longer messages are now available up to 600 characters, which is really one of the huge wins from going to the Remind plan, and teachers are typically very excited about. And also voice calls are available, which is another means of communication, and Remind helps organize the phone call aspect of a teacher's communication plan, so we can jump into that and take a look at how you would make those calls. And then, of course, all of our features that you're probably familiar with, we'll take a look at those message components too. So bear with me as I pause and move into my Remind account to show you how to message. No, it's a busy back to school time. So again, appreciate everyone for making the time to learn more about how to support your teachers, and hopefully this makes everyone's back to school that much better. All right, so we are in the Remind product now on the web version. Of course, there's also the app version. And what we're looking at here is a district administrator in their Remind account. That's why they can see the Remind district, but also the schools within the district. If you're a school administrator, you will see just your school. And you'll also see the classes that you own. So as a teacher, I would just see my classes. Of course, I could create a new class from here if I were a teacher, and that would be a class that I could ask my parents or students to join. As a school administrator, I'd be able to see information about my school and at the district. So just wanted to orient you there. For the message piece, I would click on the Messages tab, and then everyone, regardless of your role in Remind, has access to the Message Composer, which is this blue pencil icon. Click on the Message Composer, and I have a couple options. When I create a message, I want to think about, of course, the audience that this message is intended for. As a teacher or as an administrator, I may want to send an announcement that would go out to a large audience, potentially the entire district, my entire school, or as a teacher, my entire class and the parents within that class. If I'm sending a message to a larger audience, we call that a class announcement. So let's say I want to send as a principal to everyone in Remind Primary, but I'm actually going to select a specific role and I want to send my message just to the teachers. I can select that, press continue, and that's going to be an announcement that goes out to all of my teachers. But as a reply, option, only teachers can reply to me. So they're not going to reply, and if they reply, not all the teachers will see it. Just me as the sender, as the principal, would see their reply. And what's great about that is it allows you to have a mass communication, but still, if there's follow-up needed about your message, you could break off into those one-on-one, two-way conversations. So some flexibility there. I can also, of course, choose to just send a message to an individual or up to 9 other individuals for a group conversation. So really 3 types of messages: class announcement for that large audience, the classic one-on-one conversation for personalized conversations, maybe an intervention with a parent or around a student's needs, and then a group conversation that might be, we see a lot of our teachers using it for team conversations. So if I'm on the 5th grade team, we could have a thread with all of the teachers and kind of talk about best practices and what's working, or any updates we might have with each other in that group conversation. So here I've got a sample message. You are able to translate messages, which is a feature a lot of our teachers find useful, especially when sending messages out to parents. So how our best practice and how we recommend doing that is, of course, including your message in however many languages as you need, but making it one message so that you don't have to send multiple messages out in different languages. So if I have a large Spanish-speaking population, I might want to send my messages in both English and Spanish. How we would do that is we recommend copying your message first, and then when you click on translate, we have 85 different languages here. Select your language. That's going to automatically translate your text, and then to also include it in English, you would paste your original message back, and now you have both languages and the same message. So great for making sure, breaking down some of those barriers and making everyone feel included and connected to your classroom or school. Another great piece of the message feature and composer that you might want to especially address in your training is if your teachers are using Drive or your Google School, or if they're on OneDrive, connected accounts over here on the right allows you to incorporate files or assignments in Google Classroom directly from your Drive into the message. So I could choose the file I wanted, and it's right there embedded, which just takes down an additional barrier to clicking on a link and having to go out. It's all right here in your message, and we're seeing, a lot of teachers using this. You can also connect to your Quizlet account and include a Quizlet quiz, or more traditional, just upload a photo, upload a file. We encourage you to think about making messages more than just text, and making them more dynamic, because that, of course, is just increasing visibility into what's happening at your building or in the classroom. So teachers may, send a photo of work that's being done in class to share with parents, or you may attach your newsletter, weekly newsletter. All of those types of things can be done with the additional features here that you can add to your message. One other piece I like to point out is that you can schedule messages ahead. So if you would like to, if there's going to be a PTO meeting every, third Tuesday, you could schedule all of those reminders ahead of time once you have that calendar. And so set it and forget it, and know that the communication is going to still reach the audience when it's appropriate. So I'm going to go back to the presentation in a second, but I wanted to do a quick question here, and I'm going to launch a question, and please give me your feedback. The question is, what Remind message features will you and your teachers find most helpful? Which ones do you think are going to be popular in your building? So thanks for responding to that. Great. So I'm seeing a lot of responses. Appreciate that. Looks like class announcements and longer messages and translations are really popular, and that's great to hear. Definitely seeing that the translation feature and the longer messages are across the board features that a lot of our teachers are finding really helpful. Thanks for answering. Okay, back to the presentation. Wanted to go into our administrator features now and talk a little bit more about if you have administrator access, how you can use these features to support your training first off, and then also how to support engagement in your building after the training too. So in the administrator dashboard, you do have access to more visibility into what's happening within Remind at your particular community. So this is a great resource down here too. When you get this presentation after, some great ideas about how to drive engagement. Definitely recommend checking that out. But let's go back into the product and we can take a look at the admin dashboard more closely. So as I mentioned before, you could have district access or just school level access. I imagine many of you have school level access. And within this overview page, this is a great place to get a quick snapshot of what's happening at your school with Remind. So I can see that there's a top teacher user, a most active teacher, and that might be someone you want to point to help you lead your session, or also kind of ask ahead of time, what are some use cases of Remind? How would you recommend using Remind to teachers so you have an authentic voice in your training and it's not just Remind generated content. Another nice feature here is that you have a scroll of recent messages that have been sent out. And we recommend, of course, screenshotting these and including them in your training, making it more personalized so teachers can see the types of messages that are going out within your building and get ideas about how to use Remind at the training too. Also important to point out that the people list is where you'll be able to make sure that everyone is connected in the way that they're supposed to. So you might want to go to the role and filter for teachers before your training and see how many of them have logged in and connected their phones. So this little blue reachable icon here indicates that these individuals have already downloaded the app and connected their phone to Remind. So that's a nice way to just kind of pre-check to make sure everyone in the training is ready to go before you host it. This is also where teachers can jump into their Remind and see if any parents are connected or not, or need to be connected. They can change a role or, as an admin, or copy to another class. This is also where you pull message history. If you pull message history from a user, that could be another way to come up with some best practices. This is also where you would go to investigate a conversation further if needed. And so another place to get the information you need. In your training, I would also mention to your teachers that they can access the Remind Help Center directly from their account and search our frequently asked questions, contact support, since they will have priority support with the Remind plan. Always nice to be able to point to teachers where they need to go to find further help. And I would also recommend discussing with them the ways they can customize their account settings. You can set office hours. You can make sure you change the information if you need to about your name in Remind. Decide how you want to connect to Remind, either through your phone primarily or email, and also take a look at your specific preferences when it comes to receiving calls, if you'd like to receive calls or not, or allow replies to your messages. So ways to customize how each teacher wants to use Remind in those account settings, which also is a nice thing to feature in your training. I just realized that I forgot to jump into calls when we were looking at messages. So I want to do a quick overview of calls. Again, this is with the paid Remind plan that you get access to this. And really the advantage we find here and what we hear from our teachers is, one, typically the information within Remind is parents have connected themselves, or if they have rostered, have good contact information. So it ensures that, you know, a phone call can be made to the right number. And if you make a call, what happens is it connects to your actual phone. So if I were to call, let's see if I've got someone set up. If I were to call David here, it would then call my phone. I would pick up my cell phone, and then it would connect us. And it still stays private because the phone number that pops up on someone else's, on the recipient's phone, is still a proxy number. It's not your actual phone number. From here, then, you can make notes as a teacher and keep a call log. And this is what our teacher users have found really helpful. So if they've made a call, we can find that call in the call history. Just hold on, let me see where one of those are. And I would be able to make some notes on that call specifically. So let's actually go back real quick and I'll take a look at this one here. So if this is my call history, I would be able to, for some reason it's not showing up. Long story short, you'd be able to jump into that call that was made and leave some notes. So I might be able to say, you know, this call was about a assignment that I wanted to talk about with the parent that was missing, and I would then be able to pull that call history, email it to myself, and use that as a piece of evidence, whether I'm going to a conversation about my evaluation or just keeping it for my own records. Remind makes it easy to do that. Okay, so those are the main things I wanted to point out in the admin dashboard. Happy to answer more questions about this component too, but in thinking about this training specifically, I would recommend kind of using the dashboard to capture some ideas about how Remind's being used in your building and identifying if teachers are ready to go for the training, and then using those authentic examples at your training. So we're gonna jump back into the presentation and take a look at the next piece, which is onboarding your community. So what does it look like for your teachers as they are getting ready to jump on Remind and the Remind plan, both for the rostered experience and the non-rostered experience, so that you know what they need to prepare to do before your training, or you can actually help them do some of this during the training. It's up to you. So if your school or district is not rostered, that means that teachers it's going to be on the teacher to create their accounts. So this is something that you could do during the training and walk them through, but you would jump in, potentially show them on your own Remind how to create a class, and ask teachers to create those classes. Make sure that your teachers know their class code, and really discuss the plan for how you're going to get parents and students to join classes. So this, without rostering, it's pretty similar to whatever your teachers would have been doing before on Remind. The difference is that now they'll be able to have, of course, those longer messages and so forth, but the same experience of creating an account, creating a class on their own, and then making sure the class is attached to the district, and then deciding on the best course of action to communicate how students and parents are going to join. Typically, we see the 8-10-10 texting flow be the best way to do it, where the teacher would share their class code during a back-to-school night with parents, and parents would be able to text and easily join the appropriate class or classes. For the rostered experience, the advantage of rostering is that all of this is done on the back end because your district has connected your school information system to Remind. So once that information has been synced and the accounts have been created, teacher accounts are automatically created or merged if they've had existing accounts, and they will be able to see their classes pre-populated within their account. Students would get a notification that their account has been created, parents would get a notification, and everyone would be in the right place. So that really takes some of the barriers to entry down and ensures that everyone is where they need to be. So your district administrator, or perhaps you may have been involved yourself, would need to think about the best kind of communication plan for your specific community, as far as announcing that you're on Remind now as a district, and then sending notifications that come directly from Remind after, because we all know that sometimes if we don't know who the sender is, it can be overlooked. So definitely recommend having an announcement go out from the district or school and then following it up with these automated messages from Remind. Our recommendations for onboarding is, again, we have some email templates that can help send that information directly from your community, and it's important to do that before the Remind specific notifications. Also encouraging mobile usage. Email templates or emails can be sent from Remind and messages to phones about account creation, but not everyone has the app. And so recommending, if you have a smartphone, of course, Remind can still be used just through SMS if smartphones aren't available to everyone. But the app is the best experience, so we do recommend promoting that as you're getting everyone on to Remind. And then if someone's non-rostered, potentially, there might be someone, if you're rostered and there's people outside of your school information system that may want to join, encourage them to join. They can still join by texting the code and joining the class. All right, I'm going to do another poll question right here. So let's get into that. Wanted to see here if your school or district has rostered your community. And if you don't know, that's okay. Okay, so some of us have, some of us haven't. The great thing about Remind is it can be used in both ways, but rostering definitely helps. So if that's something that you want to explore more, we also have a webinar on rostering and definitely recommend checking that out. The great thing is if it is connected to your school information, if Remind is connected and rostered, then all the updates that happen automatically in Remind. So if a student moves from a class to a different class or leaves the building, all those changes are reflected within Remind too. Great. Okay, so we've talked about messaging, we've talked about the administrator dashboard, onboarding. Now we're getting into the training piece and all of the training materials and our recommendations. We have a plug and play training for you. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible. This is a slide presentation that you can customize. It is there for you to make it your own, and like I said, incorporating some of those personalized or more customized examples of how to use Remind for your particular building is definitely recommended. But this slide presentation with all of the parts of the product to go through, when to pause, all of that is here for you. We also have a script, so you can have the script printed out, have the presentation up, of course, make it your own, but trying to make it as easy as possible. We know how busy everyone is, especially this time of year, and this can really help take some of the grunt work out. You're not going to have to take screenshots of the product. We have that all for you in the training presentation. We do also have video tutorials that we recommend sending out after your training, but also showing during your training. Sometimes it's nice to have a break and to be able to show, school-wide messaging on Remind, teacher features. All of those are great to share during your presentation. And we're going to be adding more of those, so keep your eye out there. Yeah, so one more question just to get an idea before we talk about training best practices, but wanted to have an idea of when you're going to host your training. So are you going to have your training during a designated professional development day? Is it tacked onto a staff meeting? Is it something more casual, like a lunch and learn, more optional, or something else? Yeah, so a lot of us are going to be doing it during a staff meeting or PD day, and so I know sometimes from being in those myself, they can be a little monotonous sometimes and sit and get. So I recommend a couple things to make the training more interactive for your teachers. And so first off, definitely recommend trying to get everyone logged in before the training. We have, I'm sure, all been in trainings for new technology tools where a lot of time is spent on just logging in. And so sending a message to encourage teachers to do that beforehand is the best practice. And potentially mentioning too, that if you've rostered, accounts will be merged and so forth, and maybe some expectations around having the app as on them and bringing their phones to the training too, so you can have both the web and app experience is a recommendation. Also, I've seen a lot of success having an administrator. You may be an administrator right now on here, but if you're not, having your administrator come to the training and setting the expectation around how Remind is going to be used in your building really sets a purpose to the training and sets that clear expectation at the start so that teachers aren't lost and thinking about, what is this Remind? Why are we being told to use Remind? Just making that really clear. Potentially, you might be using Remind specifically for driving more attendance or for family engagement, and so setting that context and potentially talking about cadence of how many messages are expected to be sent each week. So and those kinds of clear expectations are really helpful. Also recommend having a veteran Remind user come in and share and be kind of your spotlight super user to help encourage teachers to see how it actually is helpful, and having that voice of a peer discuss why Remind is really making an impact for them and their students. Make it as real as possible. Don't rely on just our images in our slide deck to inspire your staff. And then lastly, to be interactive, encourage you to set up a class for the training. So you can build a class, create a class just for the training, have the code and have teachers practice joining by texting the code to 81010, and then they can send sample messages within that class, receive and reply, and really understand how it works in a low stakes environment. And then you can, of course, just archive that once the training's done. But that's really helpful for engaging your participants during the training. Wanted to mention too that we all know that, especially in the beginning of the year, if it's a PD day or just tacked onto a meeting, everyone's super busy. And so, we can provide information on the front end, but the more we can integrate it throughout the year, the more success you'll see. So whether it's setting up an internal space on the web, if it's a Google site or your PD, LMS, whatever it is, create a spot for these resources to live for teachers after the fact, so that they can come and share ideas, or at the very least know where to go to get information about Remind after the session. I think incorporating the sharing of sample messages and success stories throughout the year, even if it's little snippets, can be really helpful too. And so whether you're an admin and modeling, sending messages out to teachers, or taking screenshots from that overview page and showing them as part of your monthly meeting every time, the more you can sprinkle and remind and examples and kind of use that positive reinforcement to drive usage, the better. This last slide here is our kind of high-level curated list of some of our best resources for yourselves as administrators or trainers, and then also for your parents and students. And so these are all linked. And remember, you are getting this presentation after, so this is a nice place to come and click through and see what's going to be helpful to share with your teachers as well during your training. If you need additional support, you can always reach out to, by email from your school account. We saw that that's in the account there, and also mentioned our additional webinars. Check them out. You might have seen them when you registered for this one. But that's all I have planned for today. Hopefully you feel a little better about presenting Remind to your staff. I'll hang around for any Q&A, and that's all we have planned. So once again, thank you for all the hard work that you do and for being there for our students and teachers and parents. We here at Remind are very aware that although we're just a vehicle for all the great work that you're doing. So hopefully we can help continue to support you and your teachers during this school year as well. Thank you so much for joining me. So I have one question. Can you set a reoccurring message to be sent each week? So you can schedule messages ahead, but that would just be that singular message. So in order to do a reoccurring message at this point, every week, you would have to set up that scheduled message for each week. So it's not like a reoccurring calendar event. It would have to be that singular message each week that you're setting up to be scheduled. Any other questions? Can we get a copy of this? Yes, we will be sending this presentation out as a follow-up, so look for that email. You will have that. It's also accessible from where you registered for the webinar. There's a link to download it. And how do you make an individual message or individual announcement a one-way message? So that would mean, just to clarify, you would want to send out an individual message but not have a reply. The way to do that would be to turn off the setting that you receive replies. So let me switch back into the product to show you. So in my account settings, under communication, I would uncheck allow replies to messages. Now, unfortunately, given your question, it seems like this would be something you would want to do just on a one-off instance and not have your replies turned off all the time. Right now, it's a global setting, so you would have to uncheck it and then check it again. But there is a way to turn off replies. Any other questions? All right, well, again, thank you for being here. Hopefully this was helpful. I'm always eager to share more about just setting up the training and not doing it, as having it's so much more powerful to have someone like you host the training instead of having a remind person come in or webcast in. So really appreciate the work that you're doing, and looking forward to hearing from your schools as the school year goes on. One more question. Do parents need a Gmail account to access documents? So they would be able to see that like initial preview of the document, but in order to actually get into it, they would need a Google account. All right. We're finished 4 minutes early, so we all get 4 minutes back. And we will, good luck with Remind, and hopefully it does all that you need to do. And just keep in mind, we do take feedback, so feel free to join our Facebook community and provide feedback on ideas and thoughts about how we can improve our product anytime. We really love to hear from our users. Thanks so much, and have a great afternoon, everyone.